I'm Pastor Kyle. We want to welcome you. It is going to be a great Sunday together. We had a great first service this morning. One quick housekeeping thing before I get too much further. Last Sunday, if you were here, you might have noticed when you left, there were some notes that people left on the cars or something. We just want you to know that wasn't us. We're not sure, they didn't put their name on it, so we don't know who to thank for that generous gift. But if you can hear my sarcasm in that, I hope. But anyways, that wasn't from us. Those views aren't ours. I don't know who did that, so I'm sorry if that caused any confusion. But we just want to let you know, we'll tell you what we think and believe right here from the front in the service, straight up to your face, without hiding. So we're glad you're here this morning. We're going to continue our series on how to be an influencer, because I'm convinced, right, we're at the beginning of a brand new decade. We're at the beginning of a brand new year. And many of us, hopefully all of us, are thinking about how can my life matter? How can I be significant? How can I make an impact in the world around me? Last Sunday, we talked about how God has made us to be salt and light, to go into our world, to have an influence, and that Jesus literally calls us to be distinct, to be different, and to be an influence in our world and in our culture. About a week or so ago, I was over at the gas station. I was actually at Sam's Club getting gas in my truck. And I was sitting there, so many times you go there, there's a line, right? So I'm sitting in line waiting for my turn. And there's a young woman, maybe 2 or 3 cars ahead of me, who's about to get her gas. Now, if you've been to Sam's Club before, you know that you can only drive one way through the gas station to the pumps. And, 90% of cars have the gas nozzle on the driver's side. But at Sam's, there's always people who will try to pull on the pump where the gas nozzle is on the other side of the pump, and they try to get the hose and stretch it as far as they can and come around their car and stick it in, right? The whole time they're like battling the hose while they're doing this. Maybe you've seen this before. So I'm sitting there waiting to pump my gas. And sure enough, here comes a young lady, and she's going to pump her gas, but, her gas tank is on the opposite side of the pump. And so she grabs the big hose, she pulls it across, she unscrews the gas cap, she sticks it in, she clicks the handle so that it's locked and pumping gas, and then she lets go of it. Well, you could just imagine what might have happened in that moment, because there was still a lot of tension pulling on that hose, and apparently it wasn't, seated real well in the gas nozzle there. And so it came out, and gas started spewing all over the place, all over her, all over the ground, everywhere. There's gas all over the place. I mean, I started looking around for where's the shut-off valve, because they have one of those emergency things. I was like, this could get really dangerous if we're not careful. And this poor girl had gas all over her. And I'm sitting watching, and she's trying to do this, to get the gas off, as if that would help. I mean, it's just rubbing it in, making it worse. But it's like, I can't imagine how bad, she smelled and felt after that incident. The funniest part was, after she was done pumping gas, she's literally standing in a giant puddle. She drives her car away. And I'm up there getting my gas, and the gas station attendant, several of us are chatting about this little incident, and the gas station attendant says, yeah, I walked up to her and I said, oh, did you have a little accident or something? And she's like, oh, who, me? No, I'm just standing in a puddle of gas, with gas all over me, but I didn't spill anything, it wasn't me. And, when I thought about that, I realized that sometimes that's a picture of what our life is like. We have great intentions about what we're going to do, where we're headed in life, what we want to accomplish, but just carrying it out gets a little crazy, and sometimes we lose track of the nozzle, and gas goes flying everywhere. I mean, sometimes that's just the way life happens to us, right? Sometimes we have the best intentions, but life sort of happens to us. I thought about that with our series, Influence. We have this great desire, I want to change the world. I want to make a difference. I want to do all these things. But then sometimes we kind of wake up and we realize, a week passed and I did nothing. I mean, a month passed, a whole year passed by. I mean, some of us recently woke up and realized, hey, it's 2020. What happened in 2019? I thought I was going to do something. I thought I was going to accomplish something. I thought big things were going to happen. And, we had these big hopes and dreams and plans, but it just didn't happen. It didn't work out that way. And maybe you could relate to that poor girl trying to pump her gas, that, sometimes you've got the best intentions, but life just doesn't work out that way. Well, this morning I want to talk about some barriers that keep us from having the influence that I believe God is calling us to have in this world, that keep us from being the literal salt and light that make an impact for Jesus Christ in our culture around us. And I want to talk about not just understanding what these three barriers are, but also a practical way that we can overcome those, so that we can talk about not only what is the barrier, but how do I live in such a way as to put that barrier in the past so that I can have a life of influence, so that I can impact my culture and the world around me. And so if you're taking notes, I want to encourage you to jot these three things down, as well as the truth statement that's going to go alongside of it. So the first one is this: the first barrier that keeps us from being the influence that we're called to be is the barrier of pride. The barrier of pride. See, pride is that original sin, right? It started in the Garden of Eden with Adam and Eve. And Adam and Eve decided, right, that they wanted to do life without God. Like the serpent came in and deceived them into thinking that God was holding something back from them, that God didn't want them to have their eyes open and to be able to see and do the things that God could do. And so they bought into this lie, a lie that all of us have been buying into for centuries since that time, that you and I can do life on our own, that we don't need God. In fact, the heart of this lie is really that the story of the world is all about us. Most of us, we have this disease, right? It's just natural. It's something we were born with, and that is that we are self-centered. We are self-focused, and we have a tendency to make life all about numero uno, right? It's all about me. And I don't know about you, but every single day when I wake up, I have to literally fight against a tendency to think that everything in my life should be revolving around me and there to serve me and be about me. And sometimes we are so busy focused on ourselves that we can't influence anyone else. Sometimes we're so busy building our kingdom, we're so busy building our platform, we're so busy doing our stuff that we lose sight of the fact that we're called not to build up our kingdom, but to build up His kingdom. So often we lose sight of that, right? So often we're just consumed in what's happening with me, what's going on in my life, what I want to promote, what I want to be about, what I want to put on my social media, all those kind of things. And don't get me wrong, right? It's fine to have a social media page where you post about what you had for lunch or your cool outfit of the day or whatever it is. Like, that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But we have a tendency as a culture to buy into the lie that everything is about us. Right? And I want to push back on that just a little bit this morning. I want to push back on it because life isn't designed to be about us. We were not created to live for ourselves. In fact, do you know what the Bible says over and over and over again? It says this in James chapter 4. God opposes the proud, but He gives grace to the humble. Over and over. It's repeated like, okay, just in case you were too slow to catch it the first time, I'm going to have it in there multiple times. Peter says it, Paul says it, James says it, right? God opposes the proud. And I don't know about you, but sometimes when I'm trying to get through life, I feel like the poor gal trying to pump her gas at Sam's Club so often. Like, I don't need God coming against me on top of that. Life can be challenging enough on its own. And so God gives grace to the humble. And so instead of seeking to build a kingdom of one, instead of being focused on myself, the answer, right, is instead of pride, to be humble. To be humble. Right? God opposes the proud, but He gives what? He gives unmerited favor and grace to those who are humble. To those who are humble. And so what if you and I, instead of thinking that all of life is about us, what if instead of having this focus of building my kingdom, what if we could shift our focus? And we could recognize that our part in this story is really not to get all the glory for ourselves. Our part in this story is to give glory to the one who deserves it. Our part is not to build our kingdom. Our part is to build his kingdom. And if we shift our focus and mentality, something powerful can happen. See, I like to think about it like this. The sun, right? The sun shines every day so that we can get that awesome vitamin D that we need, so that plants can grow, so that we have warm temperatures that are just right for us to live and survive in. It's amazing, right? And it provides light for us, and it rises every day and sets every night, and it's just a beautiful, amazing thing. But at night, we have light by what? By the moon. And do you know what's interesting to me about the moon is the way that God designed it, the moon doesn't actually generate any light on its own. The moon is simply a giant reflector that takes the light of the sun and reflects it back to the earth, so that we have sunlight in the day and we have moonlight in the night. But the moonlight is just a reflection of the greater light of the sun. See, so often you and I, we're trying to be the sun. We want to be the one that gets all the glory. We want to be the spotlight. We want to be on the front edge of stuff. We want to be the ones creating all the content. We want to be the influencers, right, that everyone comes to and turns to. But what if we realize that the ultimate influencer is God, and that our role is not to be the sun, our role is to emulate the moon and reflect back the glory of God to our culture. To be giant reflectors that take the light of God and shine it out into the world. So the focus is never about us. The focus is always about him. The focus isn't about me trying to do something. It's about trying to reflect the light of the one who we love. I thought about this idea of being humble, and what does that look like? I think we have a perfect example in Jesus Christ, right? Think about Jesus. He's in heaven. He's God. He's the creator. He's the one who made the world that we live on. And here he gets assigned this mission, like, I want you to go down to earth. I want you to become a human being like one of the things that you created. I want you to give up the glory and the rights and all the things that you enjoy in heaven. And I want you to come down to earth to be born in a stinky manger, to live in the brokenness and mess that humanity has created. I want you to give up all of that, all of your rights, everything, to come down and live as a man on earth. And you know what's amazing about Jesus? The one human being who's ever lived, who rightfully could have said, you know what, life is all about me. You should all bow down and worship me. Everything that's happening should point to me. Everything should be all about me. What did Jesus do instead? Do you know what Jesus did? Jesus served people. Jesus loved people. Jesus gave his life away. Listen to what Mark records, these words of Jesus in Mark chapter 10. Jesus called them to him, and he said to them, you know that those who are considered rulers of the Gentiles lord it over them, and their great ones exercise authority over them. But it shall not be so among you. But whoever would be great among you must be your servant. And whoever would be first among you must be the slave of all. For even the Son of Man came not to be served, but to serve, and to give his life as a ransom for many. Isn't that powerful? Jesus said even in his day and in his culture, the rulers of the Gentiles would lord it over all the people, right? You guys should serve us because we have the positions of power and influence and authority. Isn't that what our culture says today? Right? If only we could get to the place where we're the influencer, where we're the one in political power, we're the one in control, we're the one with all the money, then what? All of life would be about us and everyone would serve us. But Jesus said, if you want to be great in my kingdom, that's not the way to do it. Jesus said, if you want to be great in the kingdom of God, it's about serving. It's about giving your life away. And Jesus set the example, right? He said, I didn't come to serve, I came to give my life away. And Jesus demonstrated that when he died on the cross. He gave his very life on our behalf. And so, if we're going to have an influence in our culture, the way God's designed it to be, it can't be about us. It can't be about me and my glory and my kingdom of one here, what I'm trying to build. No, it's got to be all about God's kingdom and his glory. I've got to get over pride. I've got to have a humble servant's heart. I've got to live like Jesus and realize my mission is to serve, not to be served. Right? The second one is this. I want you to write this one down. The second barrier that keeps us from having the influence that we should have is fear. See, you and I, we have this issue, this problem. And that issue is that I care way too much about what other people think. There you go. I said it, right? Some of you have the same problem. We worry about what everyone thinks, and that affects every decision we make. We stand in front of the clothes in our closet thinking about, what can I wear that would impress people? What could I say that would impress people? What could I post on my social media pages that would really impress other people and get them to like me? You see, all of us want other people to what? To like us. We want to be popular. We want people to think highly of us. And do you know what that does? It creates this fear inside of us. That if I wear the wrong thing, say the wrong thing, do the wrong thing, post the wrong thing, then guess what? Someone might not like it. They might not like me. They might reject me. And that would be the worst possible thing that could happen to me. We back down sometimes from things that we know are true. We don't stand for what's right sometimes because we're too worried about what popular opinion says. Sometimes in the awkwardness of moments, it's easier just to sit back and pretend you've got nothing to do with it. It's easier just to sit back, right? Like at the office when people are talking about religion and you have an opportunity to share your faith with someone else. Oh man, I don't want anyone to think I'm like one of those crazy church Bible thumper people. Like, I don't want anyone to get the wrong idea about me. I don't want to say something that could, upset the apple cart or whatever. Like, so I'm just going to sit back. I'm just going to hang back here. I'm not going to try to stir the pot. Like, I'm just going to let it lie, right? And so many of us, right, we're just leading in fear. We're living in fear. But listen to what 2 Timothy chapter 1 says. This is Paul, and he's writing to his mentee, his little disciple, Timothy. And he's going to give him this word of encouragement, 2 Timothy 1:7. Paul says to Timothy, God gave us a spirit not of fear, but of power and love and self-control. Isn't that good? Paul says to Timothy, don't you live in fear. Don't let the world dictate to you who you are. You stand up for what you know is true. You stand up for what you know is right. Now, listen, I want you to see this in the context, right? It's easy for us to pull a verse out of context and just say, oh yeah, it's all about no fear. Let's live in power and love and all that. But listen to the context. I'm going to read verses 5 and 6 before this verse, and I want you to hear what's happening right here. Paul says to Timothy, I'm reminded of your sincere faith, a faith that first dwelt in your grandmother Lois and your mother Eunice, and now I am sure dwells in you as well. For this reason, I remind you to fan into flame the gift of God, which is in you through the laying on of my hands. For God gave us a spirit not of fear, but of power and love and self-control. What is Paul saying to Timothy? Paul says, hey, you remember your grandmother? You remember your mother and the faith that they built into you? God's doing something in your life. He's given you purpose. He's given you calling. He has plans for your life to use you. And Paul says, Timothy, do you remember that moment when I laid my hands on you and I commissioned you and I called you to be the leader of God's church and I set you up to be a man in the culture who would speak what's true and what's right. And I gave you this responsibility, and now I'm calling you, fan that flame, build that fire and be bold. Don't live in a spirit of fear. Paul is saying to Timothy, look, God's given you influence and power. Don't cower back in fear. Don't lose your ability to influence. So instead of fear, instead of walking in fear, we need to be what? We need to be bold. We need to be bold to stand for what is true and what is right. Let me give you another example. Probably one of the biggest issues in our whole culture today. One of the biggest areas where it's tempting to just say, oh, you know what, it's better if I just step back and I don't say anything. You know, about a year ago, our church did a series called Pastors Drinking Coffee, Talking Sex. And for several weeks, we did a series about sexual purity. And we did a series about God's plan for sexuality, and we talked about some challenging issues in the culture, things like transgenderism, homosexuality, and gay marriage. And here's the thing, right? Yes, we were bold to say what's true, but we were loving. We were compassionate, and we didn't judge anyone, and we didn't come to condemn and point any fingers. And we were careful to do it in as loving and compassionate as a way as we could, but at the same time to address a topic that we believe is very relevant and powerful in our culture. And you know what? Unfortunately, some people react to that. Some people push back against that, and some people don't like that message. And yet, here's the reality as Christians. Our job isn't to go around and pick fights. But if we're not bold in our culture to stand for what's true, if we're not willing to tell our culture in love what is true and good, what will lead them to the place of life and blessing and joy in their life, then what are we doing? What are we doing? We're not being bold, right? And so I want to challenge you. If you're going to make an impact in the culture, it's not going to be from sitting on the sidelines. Your impact in the culture is not going to happen if you're too afraid and too quiet and you allow yourself to say, well, I'm an introverted personality. I'm just a quiet person. I don't want to stir the pot. I don't want to be salt and light. Remember we talked about salt and light? The reason they make an impact is because they stand out. They're different. They impact what's around them because they're not the same. And so many of us have such fear about fitting into our culture. We're so worried about what other people think that our impact is minimized. So I'm going to challenge you today to be bold, right? To be bold. All right, number 3. You ready for this? Last one. The third one barrier that keeps us from having the influence that God has created us to have is the barrier of busyness. Busyness. So many of us are so busy. In fact, when you ask your friends, when they came into church today, hey, how you doing? I'm busy. How was your week? It was busy. How's everything going for you? Oh, just busy, lots of stuff to do, places to go, things to have happen, all these meetings, all these plans, all these stuff. And guess what? I get it. I know it's busy. I know what it's like to have a job and to juggle kids and soccer practice and basketball games and piano practices and dance recitals. And man, we have so much going on, right? We have homework and classes to go to, and we have friends to hang out with, and we have so many things happening in our lives. We are busy all the time. In fact, we live in such a busy culture, and we are more distracted than we've ever been. Right? I read some books about this past year about how distracted we as a culture are, that we are just constantly overwhelmed with so many things to do and so many distractions that we are busy all the time. Now, here's the thing. It's not bad to be busy unless busy keeps you from doing what you need to be doing. You see, so often we can allow the busyness of life to pull us away from our most important priorities. For example, some of us would say, oh, well, I really want to know God and I really want to read the Bible and pray and get to church. But you know what? Life just kind of happened. We're like the girl trying to pump gas. It was like, well, I just had a busy week, and the wheels just kind of fell off. And I had all these meetings and these places to go to and things to do. And man, it was a busy week, so I just didn't get time to do what I wanted to do. And we make that excuse, right? And busyness keeps us from focusing on what's most important, our most important priorities. Some of us, we get focused on our careers, on our jobs. And we can spend so much time and energy going to meetings and working and grinding and doing all this stuff to bring home the bacon, to do what we feel is needed to provide for our families. But yet then we turn around and we realize that we've neglected our wives, our spouses. We've neglected our kids at home. We've neglected the things that we would say are our most important priorities. Why? Because we've been so busy. You see, most of us are busy doing a lot of really good things. It's not like we're out there causing trouble, you know. It's like we're busy doing good things, but we're missing out on the best. We're allowing busyness and distraction to keep us from our most important priorities. Last week, Pastor Woody preached, actually it was like two or three Sundays ago, the first Sunday of the year, Pastor Woody preached a really good sermon. And he talked about 6 questions that you can ask yourself to see if you're living, life with intentionality and purpose. And I love it because one of the questions that he asked was this: does my schedule align with my values? And see, that's such a powerful question because we can say, well, I really value my family, but if we never schedule time with them, then it's clear that we really don't value. So we have to be careful. Pardon me. We have to be careful that our walk matches up with our talk. Right? We have to be careful that we're living in light of what we truly say is important to us. We have to be careful, right? It's such a tendency for us to get distracted and busy and lose sight of our true priorities in life. And so, I want you to hear the words of Jesus in Luke chapter 10. Listen to what Jesus said. He's speaking to Mary and Martha. And Jesus says, "Martha, Martha, you are anxious and troubled about many things, but only one thing is necessary. Mary has chosen the good portion, which will not be taken away from her." You see, so many of us are like Martha. We're so busy, we're doing so many things. And yet Jesus says to Mary had chosen the one thing: to sit at Jesus' feet, to know him, to walk with him. And Jesus says, Mary has chosen the most important thing, the best thing, and it won't be taken away from her. So instead of being busy, we need to be intentional, right? We need to have clear priorities, and some of us need to be willing to say no to good things in order to be able to say yes to the best things. We need to make a commitment. I'm not going to sacrifice the ultimate priorities that I have in my life in order to favor the distractions of this world. So often we get it backwards. I'm guilty of this too. I'm guilty sometimes of getting distracted and wasting time on things like social media when I can look back on a week and say, well, I didn't get to do this or this or this that were on my priority list, but I know I didn't miss out on what was happening on Instagram. And so that frustrates me. It's something we all need to work on, isn't it? Of being intentional to say, how can I use my time and the things that God has given me to be intentional about making an influence in my culture, in the world around me? We don't do this all the time, but I want to show a quick video that I think illustrates this really, really well. It's a story of a famous basketball player named Dwayne Wade. So I want you to see this video. Turn your attention to the screens.
I have no idea who's coming. Like, literally, no idea. Hello.
Hi, Dwayne. Hello.
Hello. How you doing, brother?
Pretty good, and yourself? It's been about 12 years since I last seen you. I come from an area where not too many people make it.
It was always my dream that I'd get the chance to go to college, but we just didn't have the money.
You mean so much to us, and my brother Joaquin loved you from the beginning. He passed away in Parkland on February 14th. He was one of the 17 victims.
10 days before Christmas, our house burned down and we lost everything. It was one of the lowest points in my life.
Hey, Dwight.
How you doing, Mom?
You were the joy of my life. But I was dropping the ball. That day that I just couldn't do it no more was the day that I was gonna have to turn myself in. And I seen the tears just fall from your eyes. Your mama went down a road, Dwayne, that I didn't ever think I'd come back from. But on that road, I noticed you kept showing up. And you'll come and see about me. And Dwayne, because you believe in me. When I got out of prison, I was a different woman.
We received a phone call. Would you mind if Dwayne Wade take you and the family on a shopping spree? It just meant the world to me that you were there for us at this time. And
Thank you.
you became our hero.
A lot of the words that you said hit a spark and kind of changed where I was going.
Without you and your full tuition scholarship, none of this would have been possible.
You're not Wade, the basketball player, the legend. You're the human being that took the time and on his own wrote my brother's name on his shoe, and you cared.
When you bought your mama that church, you don't even understand the lives that you changed. So I don't have a jersey, but I brought you this.
I don't have a jersey to trade with you, but I definitely have this, the blazer that I wore to my first job interview.
My cap and gown from graduation.
This is important because Joaquin wore this in his last championship. My family wanted you to have it.
Please don't forget my brother, Akeem. Having you as a role model has made all the difference.
One of the special robes that you gave me, purple symbolized royalty, and you are royal in everybody's life that you've touched.
You completely changed the course of my life.
I know my brother is with you always.
It wouldn't have been possible to be here if it wasn't for you.
I am more proud of the man you have become than the basketball player. You are bigger than basketball.
Wow. Every time I watch it, it's a tearjerker, you know? I'm all getting emotional and stuff. But here's the thing. It would be easy for us to look at that and say, sure, if I was Dwayne Wade and I had the platform he had and I was a millionaire like he had, well, sure, I would have an influence too. I mean, that would be great to pay for someone's college education, to be able to take someone on a shopping spree. I would love, to be able to do that. But I want to challenge you for just a minute. I want you to think about something with me. Does it take millions of dollars to impact someone's life? No, it does not. Sometimes it takes a smile. Sometimes it takes just a moment out of your day to tell someone that they matter. Sometimes it takes just showing up like Dwayne did for his mom through her difficult journey and saying, I believe in you. And she said, the reason I'm a different woman is just because you believed in me. That doesn't cost a thing. I think we look about it so often from the reverse perspective. So often we tend to think, well, if I was a millionaire, then I would give money to the church and I would give money to poor people and I would do all this stuff. But see, here's the thing about it. If you're not willing to do it with what's in your hand right now, you're not going to do it when you have millions of dollars. You see, it's like Jesus said, whoever's faithful with a little could also be entrusted with much. And so let me ask you this morning, has God put something in your hand that you could use to be a blessing? The reality is all of us could make an impact today in someone's life. All of us have something that we can give to our culture. All of us can smile. All of us can be kind. All of us can love somebody. All of us can be intentional with somebody that God's put in our path. It doesn't matter if we're millionaires or not. The reality is God's given you something today. He's called you to be salt and light in the world, and don't wait until some moment that's never coming. Don't let that be an excuse, right? Don't sit back and say, God hasn't given me anything to give. God created you uniquely so that you can make a difference and an impact in this world like no one else. See, here's another thing. As I watched that video, I don't really know whether Dwayne Wade is a believer in Jesus or not. It's exciting to see him give people hope and to do things like take someone on a shopping spree or, pay for someone's college education. But the reality is, as awesome and amazing as those gifts are, as big of an impact as those gifts had in those people's lives, do you know what? As a follower of Jesus, you have something that you can give the world that is far better, far greater, and far more impactful than anything that Dwayne Wade gave to anyone in that video. Do you know what you have? As a follower of Jesus, you have hope, right? You have the opportunity to share Jesus, the love of Jesus, with everyone that you come in contact. As exciting as it is to go on a shopping spree and get more stuff from this world, you have an opportunity to impact someone's forever, someone's eternal destiny. You have an opportunity, right, through sharing God's love with someone to introduce them to Jesus, that they can have the hope of the gospel and know that forever and ever they will be with Jesus in heaven and have eternal life and forgiveness of their sins. You and I have an opportunity to do that. It's why every single Sunday at Mission Church, we have a moment at the end of our service where we invite you into a relationship with Jesus, because you know what? We can't give you a college scholarship, even though I would if I could. We can't always do financial things like that, but do you know what we can give? Do you know what you have that the world desperately needs? Is hope. It's a peace in your heart that no matter what's burning down around you, you know it's going to be okay because you're walking with Jesus. It's a joy that overcomes all circumstances, right? You have an opportunity to extend that to a lost world, to give them something so much greater. So here's my challenge to us, church. Are we going to overcome the barriers that keep us from having an influence in the world around us? Are we willing to lay down our pride and stop making life all about me and realize that the minute I start building God's kingdom, right, that's so freeing and it's so powerful. When I become like the moon instead of trying to emulate the sun. When I lay down my fear and I stop worrying about what other people think and I'm bold to say, you know what, God, I know who I am in Jesus. And I may not have all the answers, but I know the one who does. And I'm going to be bold and I'm going to come out of hiding and I'm going to use my voice, the voice God's given me, to make an impact wherever I can in my culture. You know what? I'm not going to let busyness keep me from seeing the needs all around me in my life. I'm not going to let busyness distract me from my calling in life, because I'm not here just to get through life, just to go to more meetings, just to accomplish some degree at school. That stuff is all aside to the most important calling in my life, to be a follower of Jesus, to know him and make him known. And if that's true, then I'm not going to let busyness keep me from being the person that God wants me to be, from living with intentionality. And I'm going to use whatever God's put in my hands, whatever God's given me, to be a blessing to this world and this culture around me. And I may not have millions of dollars, and I may not have a big platform, and I may not be a professional basketball player, but I can be intentional with what God has given me. Are you ready to do that today? Ready to be intentional?